Scott just made the point.
It seems to be a lot more secure, not just.
People found a new way to have fun, and naturally the federal government would like to nip that in the bud. But don't you agree that the FAA should control the new generation of remote-controlled drones for our protection? I'm PJTV's Scott Ott, joined now by Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. And men, roughly 500,000 unmanned aerial vehicles now fly the friendly, increasingly crowded skies over the United States. The FAA is preparing to regulate these drones, and it seems likely that even private hobbyists flying remote-controlled small aircraft will have to keep the vehicle in sight at all times, below 400 feet, away from airports, and fly only in daylight. But it's the commercial regulatory threat that's raising the ruckus. Drones under 55 pounds may require a pilot's license, including logging airtime in a real plane in order to be able to fly a drone. This would kill Amazon's planned drone delivery service, among other ideas. Oddly enough, larger drones are still largely unregulated, on the theory that pilots can see them coming, or on the theory that big drone makers have powerful lobbyists in Washington. Now, Stephen Green, you're a libertarian leaner who likes what flies. Shouldn't the federal government make sure that your son's new GoPro drone copter doesn't loiter over populated areas where he might lose control of it to the detriment of mere earthlings?
Yeah, there is some room here for some smart regulation. I think keeping it in within eyesight is probably not a bad one. What we have here is a situation kind of similar to all the debris that's been gathering in orbit, all the trash, all the dead satellites, all of this stuff. That we're having an increasingly difficult time keeping track of it all, to keep things like the International Space Station safe, to keep satellites from colliding into one another. It's a tough job. And now we're talking a terrestrial version where instead of $100 million to launch a satellite, you're going to be able to spend $100 to fly your drone around. So when I talk about sensible regulations, what I mean, though, is something maybe that's more temporary until I get my Kickstarter off the ground. What I'm going to put on Kickstarter is I need to raise about $10 million for a civilian-grade millimeter aperture radar to put on bottle rockets. Well, maybe oversized bottle. Okay, maybe what we're talking about is sort of a civilian-sized, shoulder-launched air or surface-to-air missile, so that we civilians can take care of the drone problems ourselves.
Contact Estes.
Believe it or not, since I moved to Texas, I went to a yard sale, and there was a guy who was selling one of those launcher tubes that you put on your shoulder at a yard sale. Anyway, Bill Whittle, you're a private pilot who I'm sure does not wish to collide with some realtor's neighborhood survey drone, or more likely a Hollywood film crew drone. Can we count on you to favor heavy regulation of commercial drone use and perhaps an outright ban on unlicensed private flight?
You can generally count on me to not support heavy regulation of any type, really. I mean, you really have to be in a pretty narrow and pretty restricted area for me to get into backing heavy regulations of anything. Aircraft maintenance is one of those areas, by the way. Look, I was watching the video and thinking about these things, and really what it comes down to is what's the threat to passenger aircraft and what's the threat to private aircraft. Now, these are really two different, completely different scenarios. They're two different environments. They're two different set of flight rules. You simply cannot endanger public commercial transportation in this country. That cannot be allowed. All major airports around the country, LAX, JFK, Washington, Dallas, are called Class Bravo airports. Bravo airspace is the airspace around the biggest airports. And these airports have an invisible but extremely effective mental wall built around them. From our first day in training, we are told we are not allowed to enter Bravo airspace without a specific clearance through that airspace. And if you do that, you're going to lose your license probably forever. So as pilots, we know we cannot go where the commercial jets are. Most of the time, the commercial jets are at 35,000 feet. Drones, completely ridiculous. But as you get close to airports, you have to be careful. So I'd be willing to talk about regulations where in areas where the jets are very close to the ground, namely airports, you might have to put some restrictions up there and get people out of that. But the other thing I did think about too, Scott, is, when you're talking about colliding with a jetliner, what you're really talking about here is, it's made out of metal. It's not that it's made out of metal. It comes down to mass. You hit something at 180, 200 miles an hour, it's just mass. It's really just that simple. How heavy is it? How much does it weigh? Most of these drones weigh less than a goose does. Significantly less, I would say. They certify airplanes by shooting turkeys into the engines at full speed. So I think a commercial airline could hit one of these small drones and it just pretty much bounce off it. With that said, it's not something you want to do. Now, a small aircraft is a whole different story, and we could do this all day. I will say one thing about what you were saying about people needing a pilot's license. Flying a drone is nothing like flying an airplane. It is absolutely nothing like it is. The whole purpose of the drone's popularity is the GPS flies the drone. It self-stabilizes, nothing like an airplane. A drone can hover, and an airplane can't. I would not want to run my small airplane into a big drone. And to the degree that that needs to be regulated, I'm inclined to think, why don't we just treat this as a civil liability issue until we start seeing those kind of problems? But you're going to have to keep them away from airports, I think.
And Bill, you'll be happy to know already that 6 or 7 Hollywood drone companies that work with film producers have already been exempted from the regulations so that they can conduct their important work, while hundreds of other applications for exemptions are being held up in regulatory processes. Although the FAA drone regulations will go into a public comment phase, bureaucrats are unlikely to hear or, frankly, to heed the voice of the dad who takes his kids to the park to fly their new Christmas present, or the young entrepreneur who dreams of tapping the technology to launch a new company, or the weekend adventurer who recaptures his youth by virtually soaring just above the treetops. We love to fly, and it shows. Of course, if they don't craft new regulations and a drone gets sucked into a jet engine, you'll hear no end to the Monday morning quarterbacking from the precheptophiliacs, the lovers of rules. But let's remind them that long before drone technology, the skies were alive, as Bill has suggested, with 15 to 20-pound flying objects that no human could control. I invite the FAA to compel the goose to comply with the new regulations. For Stephen Green, Bill Whittle, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV, I'm Scott Ott.